Now, for our second Shadow Slay video of the week. The goal is to read more. The goal is to hopefully read a lot more on the weekdays, and then on the weekend I'll just be reading the Lord of the Mystery side stories. And I think with that, we should be able to output more Shadow Slay videos until we at least finish the Forgotten Shores arc. And hopefully by that time, I think the web novel will be out. We'll see. Or like the physical release. So at least we would have made progress. That is the goal. And I'm doing new thumbnails. So the goal is to be consistent. I know I said this on live, but you guys are hearing it now for the video intro. We're doing new thumbnails, so hopefully they're a little bit consistent. That being said, we are resuming with chapter 45, and it's called Sound of Laughter. What do we get? What do we get? We got a... Oh my god! I'm so bad at intros. We literally got her vision. We got Casey's vision. The falling star, I feel like it's changing star, i.e. Nephis. But then there was like a person using an arrow. Saw like the Sunny become like an arrow guy. Well, I feel like we'll give it away. If one of the characters ends up using an arrow, you know what? It could no, it wouldn't be Sunny. Sunny already has a weapon. I feel like Casey would be the one using an arrow. Maybe she can see visions to where the people will be, and then that's where she shoots. So if at any point in this arc, Casey or Cassia uses a bow and arrow, then the vision is related to them. But then I'm like, who would the vision be related towards? Like who was Sunny in this vision? But we'll find out. Watch out for the spears and bows. I know, that's basically it. The second you see them, or the second you see anything symbolizing 7 seals, 7 heads, that's red flag. So we'll see what happens. That being said, Shadow Slave, chapter 4,000. Shadow Slave, chapter 45. So like when you want to see more, make sure you like, comment, subscribe. Dude, I've been seeing the likes on the Shadow Slave videos. There's a lot of likes on the Shadow Slave videos. The likes get a lot more likes than most of my videos right now. So I know you guys want more Shadow Slave videos. So I do apologize that it's been so slow. But here we go. Chapter 45, Sound of Laughter. Because of the shadow fragments, Sunny had absorbed... Oh, he did make that deal. I'll give you all the fragments and all, since he doesn't need them. Because of the shadow fragments, he only needs that. Because of the shadow fragments Sunny had absorbed in the last few days, the range of shadow control had increased a little. However, it was still far from being enough to explore deep into the labyrinth. He only got the general direction in which the 2 large monsters were moving. They were going west. After telling this to Nephis, they were pretty much... One sec, phone call. After telling this to Nephis, there were pretty much nothing else for him to do. In the end, Sunny decided to simply rest. The next day was promising to be full of hardships and dangers, so it was in his best interest to let his body recover as much as it could. Sometime later, Sunny was laying back on his back, staring at the gray sky. Casey was sitting beside him. Lost in her thoughts, Nephis was meditating. At least that's what it looked like. She might as well have been asleep for all Sunny knew. After a while, Casey turned to him. Sunny. He tilted his head and looked at her. Yeah? The blind girl hesitated. Do you think we'll be able to return home? Sunny glanced at her and furrowed his brows. A few seconds later, he turned away and looked at the sky again. Sure. Casey smiled. You really think so? Why? What's with all these questions? He sighed and tried to find the right words. Because of her. He pointed at Nephis, knowing that Casey won't see it. There was no one else on the stone platform, though, so it was pretty obvious who he was referring to. I'm also not someone to die easily. In fact, I'm willing to bet that you couldn't have found a better duo of sleepers to escort you across the dream realm. If anyone can survive this, it's us. So yeah, I think our chances of making it back are pretty high. Casey suddenly giggled. Aren't you a little too full of yourself? You were in the second to last place. Sunny shrugged. Oh yeah, they were both at the bottom too. That's only because someone smart told me to keep a low profile, otherwise I would have ranked higher. Then with a grin he added, much higher, third to last at least. The blind girl couldn't help but laugh. The melodic sound of her laughter made Sunny feel much better. Ooh, okay, I'm liking this chemistry. I feel the sparks already. The melodic, I cannot fucking read, man. Oh my god, what stream? This wouldn't be a stream if I couldn't read, right? The melodic sound of her laughter made Sunny feel much better. He had not heard anything like this ever since coming to the dream realm. It was so nice to see the people were still able to preserve a bit of mirth, even if hellish... Wait, what is mirth? Preserve a bit of mirth even in this hellish place. Come to think of it, this was the first time he had heard of Casey laughing at all. Back in the academy, she was always dull and bleak. After the sudden outburst, Casey's expression slowly turned wistful. A few seconds later, she asked, what do you miss most about home? Sunny tried to think of something but failed. He wasn't sure that he even had a home in the real world. This tiny room he had been renting previously was nothing but a temporary shelter from the rain. As for the real world as a whole, his life there wasn't that pleasant either. Finally, he said, I don't particularly miss anything. Casey was very surprised. Really? Don't you miss your family? Sunny smiled. I don't have I don't have a family. Well, I guess I have a sister somewhere, but we haven't seen each other in many years. Oh? I feel like that's a pretty big arc, right? The blind girl fell silent. Several seconds later, she said quietly, I miss my family the most. There were longing and sadness in her voice. Sunny didn't know what to say, so he stayed silent. Mom and Dad must be really worried about me right now. No, actually, they wouldn't be worried. They would be heartbroken. They must think that I am as well as dead already. Sunny glanced at her and sighed. You seem to care about them a lot. Casey turned to him in confusion. Of course, isn't it normal? Sunny stared at the gray sky. The wind smelled of rain. After a while, he said, I wouldn't know. That's fucked up, man. I forgot how hard his life was up until this point. In the evening, Nephis made Sunny perform the 1,000 strikes again. After that, they ate the last strips of dried scavenger meat and took turns sleeping so that one of them could always keep an eye on Casey. Thankfully, nothing happened during the night. When the morning came and the dark sea returned, they pretended to leave the giant statue. Nephis was the first to climb down. Before that, she had a few words to say. Today will be different from before. There will be much more scavengers roaming in the labyrinth. We might not be able to create an ambush or avoid fighting several of them at once. She looked at Sunny. If anything happens, her job is to bring Casey away. We can retreat by using passages that are too narrow for the scavengers. If we get separated, proceed to the high point by yourself. Don't wait for me. Do you mind? Yo, what's up, man? Good morning, bro. Do you understand? With a somber expression, he gave her a nod. Nephis returned it. Good. Time is of the essence, so let's go. Oh, it's kind of scary, man. With that, she began to descend. After Nephis reached a point 20 or so meters below, sorry, my mouse is blocking the words. She found purchase and waited. Using the golden rope, Sunny lowered Casey down. Just while climbing up, they took turns helping the blind girl. Luckily, climbing down the statue was much easier. Soon they reached the ground. Entering the labyrinth, the trio moved forward with haste. The shadow was ahead of them, scouting for monsters of optimal paths. Despite that, their progress was slow and chaotic. They had to constantly change direction to avoid groups of scavengers, often ending up in dead ends or moving further away from their destination. Sunny, who played the role of a scout and navigator, felt his brain slowly starting to boil. At some point, however, they inevitably ended up in a situation where a fight was unavoidable. There was a large group of scavengers at their heels and a pair of them blocking the paths ahead. Neither of the two groups had noticed the sleepers yet, however, since there were no other passages to turn into, it was only a matter of time. Nephis considered their options for a few seconds. There was a scowl on her face. Finally, she said, if there's only two, we can take them. Sunny looked at her with uncertainty in his eyes, but there's no time to set up an ambush. He wasn't quite... Oh, so this is head-on. Oh, this is hype. He wasn't quite sure how he could fight two scavengers at once. Despite how good of a teacher Nephis was, he only practiced with sword for a day. Facing against the scavenger alone was risky. Changing Star shrugged. It's almost the same. I'll attack first, you follow behind the shadows, and finish off once they turn. Then we will kill the second one together. Damn, that's fucking high. Yeah, I know, dude. We hit 4,500, man. Thank you, guys. Holy shit, dude. We've come a long way, man. Thank you. It's been a fun-ass year, dude. I'll tell you that much. The whole plan was based on the assumption that Nephis could survive under the onslaught of two scavengers, both attacking her simultaneously. Sunny was very impressed by her powers, but he wasn't sure if it was possible. There was a large probability that Nephis would die. No fucking way. He still remembered that she wasn't present in Casey's first vision, but why else could they do? A bit rattled, Sunny gritted his teeth. Alright, after a short pause, Nephis summoned her sword, then she stepped forward. Chapter 46 is called Experience. After finding a good hiding spot for Casey, Sunny and Nephis proceeded forward to face the scavengers. Soon, they saw two hulking silhouettes in the distance. With her lips pursed together, Nephis threw over her shoulder. Keep up. Then, okay, we're getting into fight already. All right, let's play the music. We'll get battle music ready. Then, like a runner preparing for a race, music just paused 1 sec. Okay, we're good. Then, like a runner preparing for a race, she got down on her knees, inhaled deeply, and lunged forward. Damn. Sunny dove into the deep shadows cast by the wall of labyrinth and followed. Running as fast as he could, however, the distance between them kept growing. I'm gonna lower this a bit. Suddenly, he remembered walking behind Nephis as they crossed the bridge to the academy. Was it the fate to always follow behind her? Changing Star's running speed was incredibly fast. She was practically flying through the air like an arrow. I see what we're doing. Like an arrow let loose from a bow. I see what Guilty 3 is doing. That's a little on the nose. All right. Like an arrow let loose from a bow. One of her arms was stretched backwards, holding the sword with its point to the ground. The other was cutting the air with each stride. It took the two scavengers a couple of seconds to realize what was happening after noticing her. By that time, she was almost upon them. With madness burning in her eyes and the vicious saliva dripping from their mandibles, the monster screeched and charged forwards. Nephis did not slow down, as though planning to ram them with her body. Suddenly, heart skipped a beat. 4 terrifying pincers shot through the air. At the last moment, Nephis fell backwards, falling on her side. The inertia carried her forward as she did through the mud, passing between the scavengers. Then she twisted her body and stopped herself, plunging the sword into the ground. A bit slower, and she would have been impaled by one of the scavengers' legs. Crazy, she's fucking... Oh, no, she's not fucking crazy. I added the fucking part. Crazy, she's crazy. By the time Changing Star got back to her feet, one of the scavengers had already turned around. However, Sunny couldn't see what was going on as his sight was blocked by the bulky Carapace creatures. He only heard the sound of the chitin striking against the steel. There was no time to worry about that anyway, since he had his own problems to solve. Due to the same maneuver that Nephis had pulled off, the second scavenger lagged a little behind the first one. One of it was to turn around when Sunny finally got close enough to launch an attack. Suddenly cursing, he ran up to a narrow protrusion on the coral wall and jumped, aiming to pierce the weak points of the scavenger's back from above. His shadow was already wrapped around the Azure blade, but at the last moment, the scavenger suddenly moved, slightly turning into his torso to its right. The blade missed the concave spot where the armor plate connected, an instant hit on them square in the center, sliding helplessly across the adamantine chitin. I don't know what that is. I assume it's part of the armor. Adamantine chitin crap. Instead of killing the beast with one decisive blow, Sunny ended up dealing no damage at all. What's worse, because they have to aim at the joints, right? What's worse, he landed right on top of the scavenger, practically hugging it from behind. The next moment, the scavenger shook its carapace, throwing its irritating human off. Sunny flew sideways and crashed into the labyrinth wall, feeling breath being knocked out of him, suffocating and distorted. He fell gracelessly into the mud. Not good, but some insect suddenly rolled to the side. Something tore past him, hit the wall, sending pieces of the crimson coral flying through the air. Then he was lifted into the air and thrown backwards. By the time, however, he had already come to his senses, twisting his body, suddenly managed to land on his feet and take a few steps back without falling. In the next second, his sword was in front of him, held in both hands, just like Nephis had taught him. Oh yeah, she did say hold it with 2. The scavenger was already charging at him with menacing fire burning in its eyes. Repetition experience. The shadow flowed from the Azure blade to his hand, then spread his arms, shrouding. Then he finally covered his whole body. Sunny instantly felt stronger, faster, and more resilient. But was it enough? No, to survive, he would definitely also need some luck. One pincer flew at him from the right, the other flew from the left. There was no time to retreat or dart sideways, so instead Sunny did something that made every instinct in his body scream in protest. He jumped forward, closing the distance to the charging monster. The pincers clashed together with a loud crack behind his back. Instinct or not, it was the only logical step. After all, the attack range on his sword was much shorter than the other scavenger. He could only fight back by getting close. Before the beast had time to react, Sunny did what he had recently done thousands of times. His muscles moved even before his mind gave the command. Look at that, on instinct. With one fluid motion, he raised the sword over his head and slashed downwards, pushing with one hand while pummeling with the other. His whole body moved in concert to deliver a powerful blow. The Azure blade whistled as it cut the air, then it hit the joint of one of the scavenger's front legs and cleaved right through it, severing the limb entirely. Blue blood sprayed out. Yo, he's getting strong, dude. Sunny had less than a second to be amazed. I actually did it. But there was no time to be distracted due to the loss of its front leg. The scavenger lost balance for a moment, carrying forward and down. However, he had 7... Oh, shit, I forgot he has 8 legs. However, he had 7 other legs. This wasn't going to last long. Coincidentally, though, at this exact moment, his other front leg slid into the mud, bringing the monster even further down. Sunny did not waste this chance. Taking a step forward, he thrust the Azure blade, pushing it into the scavenger's mouth. A severed mandible fell to the ground as the monster impaled itself on the sword with its own weight. It just falls. The massive body of the nightmare creature convulsed before falling still. It was dead, so there's one left. Sunny slowly exhaled, only now feeling the pain in his chest and the back of his head. He carefully touched it and grimaced. His hand came back wet with blood. At least I'm alive. You have slain an awakened beast, Carapace scavenger. Your shadow grows stronger. You have ... With no time to listen, the spell, Sunny tugged on the sword to dislodge it from the monster's head and hurried to help Nephis. However, it was too late. The other scavenger was lying in the mud, clearly dead. His limbs were like twitching, indicating that the fatal blow was delivering just moments ago. It seemed like Nephis had managed to sever its spine, piercing the weak spot on the base of the beast's torsos with her longsword. He couldn't see the silver-haired girl behind the bulky carcass. As Sunny approached it, he heard the sound of a rugged, strained breathing. Then a shaky voice came from behind the scavenger. Don't come any closer. In the deathly silence of the battle's aftermath, Changing Star's voice sounded strange and subdued. Sunny suddenly felt as though someone had squeezed his heart in a fist. Steeling himself, he took another step forward. Nephis was standing in front of the dead scavenger, trying to catch her breath after the intense fight. There was a bloody gash on her shoulder, however, it didn't look life-threatening. Why did she say that? Don't come any closer. Sunny's attention, though, was instantly drawn to something else. It seemed at some point during the fight, the tall girl's makeshift seaweed top came apart. Oh, it came apart. It came apart, leaving her naked above the waist. She was covering her chest with one arm. Behind the arm squished the supple fullness of her. Whoa, Sunny! Bro, this guy's a little too honest. Hopefully it doesn't say anything too revealing. Sunny flinched as though someone had swung at him and hurriedly turned around. His face was burning. Without thinking about it, he even made his shadow look away. Even the fucking shadow, like, turn away, bro. Sunny flinched as though someone had stung him and hurriedly turned around. His face was burning. Without thinking about it, he even made his shadow turn away. An awkward silence followed. After some time, Sunny forced himself to speak. Are you alright? Nephis was slow to answer. Yes. Good? Good. I'll go fetch Casey then. Alright. Feeling as though an army of monsters was chasing him, he walked forward on his stiff legs and then quickened his step, barely holding himself from running. Her fault. It's her fault. She should have communicated things clearer. Trying to get the vivid image out of his head, Sunny hurried to the place where Casey was waiting for them. By the time they returned, Nephis had already fixed her top and was wearing it as though nothing had happened. Okay, good for them. However, Sunny couldn't help but feel the look she gave him was somewhat weird. Forget it. The look? After checking the wound on his head, Changing Star said, it's just a bleeder, nothing serious. Tell me if you feel dizzy and nauseous or have a strong headache, though. Since Sunny had none of these symptoms, he kept silent. Nephis looked down at his clothes and sighed. Memory. He opened his mouth to say no, but then he fell silent. Memory? Come to think of it, when he killed the scavenger, the spell did say something else. Oh, you're right. Sometimes they drop memories. The memories are random, right? Like the bottomless pit of water from the bag, that was a memory, right? Come to think of it, when he killed the scavenger, the spell did say something else after informing him about the absorbed shadow fragments. At the time, he was too busy to pay attention and let me check. He summoned the rooms and quickly found a cluster representing his memories. Memories, silver belt, puppet, tear shroud, azure blade. Huh? Nothing new. Then, what was the spell talking about? Suddenly, he noticed a new set of runes in the neighboring cluster. His eyes widened. Echoes, Carapace, scavenger. Echoes? So it's like a new form of shadow fragments or memories? Echoes. Okay, so he has a new slot. Suddenly he noticed a new set of runes in the neighboring cluster. His eyes widened. Echoes, Carapace, scavenger. Okay, the first echo? Alright, that sounds hype. Oh, next chapter. Next chapter's called Echo. Alright, let's keep reading. Chapter 47 is called Echo. So thank you for pointing that out. So this is the first of many echoes. Echo. It's an echo. Sunny couldn't believe his eyes. Echoes were an extremely rare... Oh, okay, so it's something common. It's not just for him. Well, something rare that's established, but not just for him. Echoes were an extremely rare type of reward that awakens could receive after slaying nightmare creatures. Chances of getting one were very low. In the real world, an echo could be sold for an unmanageable amount of money. That's because they were much more precious than memories. Without delaying it much further, he dove into his sea of soul. There, very few things had changed. A lonely black sun was still hanging above the calm, silent waters. It was orbited by spheres of light that represented his memories. This time, there were 3 of them. So he has 3 spheres? 3 spheres of light. And it's surrounded by a black sun. Just like before, Sunny couldn't get rid of the feeling that something was stealthily moving just beyond the periphery of his vision. However, this time he didn't pay it any attention. He wanted to see his echo. It, too, was represented by a spear of light. However, this spear was much larger and hovered further away from the shadow core. With a thought, he commanded it to descend. The sphere slowly floated down and touched the dark water. As Sunny came closer, walked on the surface of the sea. Its radiance slowly faded away, revealing the monster contained within. A hulking, menacing Carapace scavenger was calmly standing in front of him. There was no madness in its eyes or any feelings at all. For that matter, after all, it was really alive. It was just an echo. Oh, shit. He can summon the echo? So he can summon it and then use it? Oh, I read echo, and that's what I'm thinking. Shiny's runes appeared in the air around the scavenger. Echo, Carapace, scavenger. Echo. Oh shit! It is Echo type beast. Echo core awakened. Echo attribute strong armored. Echo description: a cursed soldier of the fallen legion. Before Sunny knew it, a wide grin appeared on his face. The scavenger was now. Oh shit! It is his. That scavenger was now his. It could be summoned and used to. Wait, whoa! I didn't think. I thought this series was just him. He can summon echoes. Whoa, that sounds badass. That scavenger was now his. It could be summoned and used to fight against his enemies, carry heavy cargo, or perform other tasks. What's more, it was a whole rank above its master, which meant that it was much stronger, more resilient, and fearsome than a dreamer with a dormant core should normally possess. Times like this is when Fated is putting in work. Shit, alright, let's see what happens. With this Echo by their side, many things would have become easier. Yeah, fucking getting out the maze would be easier. Following an impulse, Sunny raised a hand and brushed it against a cold black chitin. He just wanted to touch his new possession. However, the moment his palm touched the scavenger, a strange thing happened. The soul of the sea suddenly surged a little, and a new set of runes appeared. Transform Echo into a shadow. So it's like a shadow scavenger? Sunny flinched and snatched his hand back. What the hell is that about? He had never heard anything about transforming echoes into something else, let alone shadows. Then again, he had never heard about shadow cores and fragments too, so it's only him. It seems my aspect holds more secrets than I thought. Sunny licked his lips. He's like, He's so excited. Sunny licked his lips and hesitated, then he cautiously said, yes. However, nothing happened. A moment later, the runes changed. Not enough shadow fragments to perform a transformation. Shadow fragments required 24. I thought he had 24, or he had 20-something. He frowned disappointed. I see, so there is another use of the fragments. They can either enhance my own core or do something weird to echoes. How do I know which to use is more beneficial without knowing what a transformation actually does? An echo was plenty useful by itself. Sunny felt that it would be wiser to concentrate on strengthening himself, at least for now. I'll experiment with it later. With that, he left the Sea of Souls. Since he had spaced out quite a bit, Nephis was looking at him with a silent question in her eyes. Sunny grinned. I got an echo. Her pupils slightly widened. Casey, on the other hand, was more expressive. An echo? You actually got an echo? Yes. Since the larger group of monsters was now minutes away from catching up with them, Sunny didn't waste any time and summoned the scavenger. The hulking beast immediately appeared in front of him, seemingly sewn together from tiny sparks of light. Soon, its black chitin became fully corporeal. Following Sunny's command, it shifted a little and raised its mighty pincers. Nephis observed the echo with an unreasonable expression, then a corner of her lips slightly curled up. Good. Oh man, this is going to make it easier then. Sunny looked at her with a smile. I think we can take it with carrying Casey outside of battle. It will help us the most. The blind girl's mouth fell open. Carry me like a mount. He chuckled and slapped the scavenger on his carapace. This... Dude, I wonder what else. Dude, imagine fucking Sunny riding one of the things into battle. Ooh, that'd be sick as fuck. He chuckled and slapped the scavenger on its carapace. This bad boy can fit a... Oh, fuck. This bad boy can fit a petite girl like you with no problem at all. Trust me. I've been clamoring these things a lot for the past few days. It's actually quite spacious on top of them, especially if they're not trying to kill you. Casey hesitated. Well, okay, if you think it's for the best. Sunny and Nephis held the blind girl to climb on top of the echo. Then they used the golden rope to create a makeshift reins for Casey to hold onto. After quickly retrieving the soul shards from the dead scavenger, the sleepers hastily left the passage, narrowly avoiding another battle. With Casey riding comfortably atop the scavenger, their overall speed dramatically increased. Sunny and Nephis were jogging in the front, hoping to recoup the time lost in the first half of the day and reach the high point within the hour or two to spare. From time to time, they had to take detours to avoid fighting groups of Carapace monsters. However, with a monster of their own by their side, the mood and mental state of the three sleepers were much better. For the first time since coming to this place, Sunny felt somewhat calm. Of course, this calmness didn't last long. At some point, he noticed that the wind had picked up a bit. Almost simultaneously, Casey asked them to stop. Nephis and Sunny looked at her with deep frowns. It seemed that they both had a bad premonition. What is it? The blind girl let go of the reins. Do you hear anything? They looked at each other, then shook their heads. No, why? Casey scrawled, help me get off this thing. After they helped her, she stood motionless for a while, listening. Her scrawl deepened. The blind girl cautiously kneeled and put her head to the ground. What do you hear? Casey licked her lips. It's It's murmuring. Suddenly, a drop of water fell on Sunny's face. He raised his head and looked at the sky. Their dark, stormy clouds were gathering with unnatural speed. Pretty soon, they were bound to be covered in completely, including the sun, and when that happened, his eyes widened. What the fuck is happening? A storm. Next chapter of the storm. So it's going to start raining? Oh, Ellie woke up. Let me let Ellie out. Chapter 48 is called The Storm. We need to move now. As Nephis turned to him, Sunny grabbed Casey and helped her stand up. His face was even paler than usual, and there was a panicked look in his eyes. Now, help me get her back on the scavenger. That silver-haired girl raised her head and looked down at the sky. Soon her expression darkened. Without saying anything else, she did as he had asked. Casey seemed a bit disoriented as she grabbed the reins and helplessly turned to her friend. Neff, what is going on? She started glancing at her. When he eventually spoke, her voice sounded heavy. A storm is coming. Meanwhile, Sunny sent his shadow to climb on top of the tall pillar of the coral and looked ahead, turning to understand how far the cliffs they were aiming for were. From the looks of it, there was a still considerable distance to go. However, the giant statue was already much further away. Going back now would have been suicide. He turned to Nephis. We're about 3 or 4 kilometers away from the cliffs. Do you think we can make it? She scrawled, if we take the most direct route, maybe. Sunny hesitated and then asked, what about the monsters? Changing started to look ahead and gritted his teeth. We'll have to cut through. That's it. That's the plan. Just fucking go guns blazing and charge through. As he was fruitlessly trying to come up with some devious trick to save them, Nephis turned her head and glanced at him, puzzled, and glanced, what are you waiting for? Run. Oh shit, already. What are you waiting for? Run. As they darted forward, heavy drops of rain were starting to fall on the ground. Strong winds were howling between the coral blades, sending bits of mud seaweed flying with storm clouds gathering in the sky. Sunlight dimmed, and a cold twilight descended upon the labyrinth. Sunny was running with all his might as though his life depended on it, because it actually did. It actually did. Like, it really did, man. He was leading the small group, choosing the straightest path towards the cliff with the help of his shadow. Nephis was a step behind him. The scavenger carrying Casey was stomping through the mud with its 8 legs in its back. With the need to avoid the monsters and the deaf breathing down their necks, they moved with amazing speed. Side passages and crimson walls were flashing past them in a blur. There was no end to hold back in the conserving strength for a long run. If they were late to reach the cliffs by a minute, their lives would be over. They had to give it their all. Sunny was ready to fight a series of bloody skirmishes all along the way, but to his surprise, the inhabitants of the labyrinth did not give them much trouble. The scavengers seemed to be as panicked as they were. Oh shit, so they're scared of something else. The bulky beasts were busy trying to hide inside the coral mounds burrowed underground. In the rare... What the fuck is making them hide? On the rare occasions when one of them showed aggression, a quick slash of sword or threatening clacks of pincers was enough to make the monster change its mind. However, no matter how fast they were moving, the storm was faster. The rain quickly turned into a peddling downpour. Each drop became a torrent. The winds grew in strength. Striking against their bodies was enough for its force to make them stumble. The light dimmed even further, reducing the visibility to almost zero. Finally, a blinding bolt of lightning tore through the sky, through the darkness, falling almost immediately by a deafening thunderclap. In the next moment, the ground under Sunny's feet trembled, causing him to lose his balance and fall. He rolled into the mud and tried to stand up, but slipped and fell again. Someone's arm grabbed him by the shoulder and helped raise him. In the darkness of the storm, Sunny saw Changestar's face. She opened her mouth and shouted, "Don't stop, run." He almost couldn't help her behind the roaring wind and rain. By the time Sunny began to move, the dark, salty water was already as high as his shins. Oh, shit. He gritted his teeth, so it's getting higher. The sea was coming back. He couldn't determine where the water was coming from, but with each minute, it was rising higher. Soon, it was up to his knees, then up to his waist, making running almost impossible. This is already claustrophobic as shit, dude. The speed of the group was slowed down considerably. It was then the sudden flash of lightning when they saw a dark mass of stone ahead. They had made it to the cliffs. Almost at the same time, a terrible rumbling sound came from the depths of the labyrinth. A terrible rumbling sound. Dude, it has to be a bigger monster. Turning back, Sunny saw a colossal crushing torrent of black water rushing through the crimson forest. Some distance away, a tardy scavenger was caught by it and thrown against the coral walls. The unbreakable carapace of the mighty creature cracked and burst open like a rotten egg. Curses. He turned to Nephis. Time is up. Started climbing. She caught him by the arm. This Mr. Echo suddenly didn't know whether the scavenger could scale the cliff in any case. Casey wouldn't have been able to hold on if he did. He helped the blind girl get down and then sent the monster back to the Sea of the Soul. Nephis lowered herself to let Casey climb on her back and then tied them together with a golden rope. Not wasting any time, she gritted her teeth and stepped forward to grab onto the wet rocks of the cliff wall. They began the ascent, rushing to get as high as possible before the black torrent hit. Some time later, Sunny screamed, "Brace!" and the next moment, a wall of dark water hit the rocks mere meters behind their feet. As Sunny held for dear life, the whole cliff shuddered. A few boulders fell from somewhere high above, missing his head only by chance. Somehow, all three of them were still alive. What the fuck, man? This escalated so quickly, dude. However, things were far from being over. The black water was still rising, now with its raining speed threatening to swallow them at any second. They had to keep climbing, and they had to be faster than the surging sea. Sunny cursed as he searched for the next hole to grab onto. The survivor he had to scale the face of the cliff was crazy speed. However, hastily climbing the wet rocks with a recipe for disaster, one slip of one hand, and he would plunge down to be crushed against the cliffs, drown or be eaten by some giant monster. The torrential rain and hurricane wind made everything even worse, and yet there was no echo. There was no echo. There was no choice. He frankly kept climbing, tearing his skin on sharp rock. Every muscle in his body was in agony. If not for the shadow warped tightly around his body, Sunny would have been long dead. But oh yeah, forget that the shadow enhances his body, right? If not for the shadow wrapped tightly around his body, Sunny would have been long dead. But even with its help, the surging dark water was getting closer and closer. Damn it all. No matter how hard Sunny tried, he couldn't win back any distance. Soon the water was at his feet. The sea slowly swallowed his legs and then his torso. He kept climbing, not fighting against the weight and water, and the force of the tide was trying to tear him away from the cliff, but it was useless in the end. But it was useless in the end. When the water covered his shoulders, oh shit, it got that high. He felt his fingers slipped on the wet rocks, and he tried to hold on to, but the current was too strong. He was pushed away like a weightless toy, losing any purchase. No. And the last second, oh shit, we saved him. And the last second, a golden rope fell into the water beside him. Shaking, Sunny grabbed onto it and held with all his strength. The rope drew tight and lifted him out of the water. His feet touched the cliff and wall again. Not wasting any time, I'm getting a little excited, dude. Not wasting any time, he resumed climbing with the help of the rope. Finally, a strong hand grabbed from above and dragged his body over the edge of the cliff. Sunny fell to the ground, struggling to breathe. After some time, he looked at Nephis, who was lying in the similar position to his right, equally as drained. She was still clutching the golden rope in her hand. Casey was sitting a few steps away from them. He wanted to laugh, but he had no strength left. They survived. Damn, that's a fucking good chapter, dude. That's so scary, dude. It's like, I think the one thing that scares me is like a natural disaster, man. Like being stuck in a flood or some shit like that. You have to like fight for your life and escape. Oh man, that like any natural disaster fucking scares me. Like being caught in like a flood. What's up, dude? Being caught in a flood, like a hurricane, earthquake, a fire, all that shit scares me, man. Fuck, man, that was scary. All right, let's keep reading, dude. For a second, I thought Sunny was gonna get separated from the group, from like the two of them, and I'm like, shit, like where the fuck does this arc go to next? But no, they're still together. Okay, good. Chapter 49 is called Natural Element. So we saved him. For a few minutes, Sunny simply lay on the ground, letting the rain hit his face. From time to time, a bolt of lightning arched through the skies, drowning everything in a blinding light. Other than that, it was almost completely dark. If not for his attribute, he would have had trouble discerning the shapes of Nephis and Casey, who were resting nearby. After some time, however, a feeling of uneasiness entered his mind. Something was off. Sunny scowled, trying to understand where that feeling was coming from. Finally, he realized that it was a shadow. It was trying to draw his attention to something. Please let me rest. I just want to rest. He was too tired to do anything. Both his body and mind were exhausted. However, the shadow was very persistent. It remained adamant. In the end, Sunny moaned and rolled over on his stomach. Then he slowly stood up. Nephis turned her head and looked at him. What is it? He grins. I don't know yet. Something feels wrong. Casey shivered and got close to Nephis, following his shadow's warning. Sunny looked around, trying... Where the fuck did we end up? Sunny looked around, trying to find any sign of danger in their surroundings. Even with his vision, he couldn't see anything out of place. The upper part of the cliffs was well above the storm of sea, forming a small island. Its surface was rugged and uneven, with several protruding ridges breaking the line of sight. There was a large space between their group and their nearest ridge. That space was littered seemingly at random with piles of dirt and tall boulders. Nephis got up and summoned her sword. Do you see anything? Sunny frowned. Not really. Okay, so we're chill right now. It's clear. At that moment, another lightning flashed briefly, illuminating the small island. His eyes widened. The tall boulders surrounding them were massive and irregularly shaped. They were black in color and motionless. There, Sunny had not recognized them for what they were at first glance. Are they like sleeping scavengers? All around them... Oh, shit. All around them, scavengers were silently lying on the ground. Sunny froze, suddenly consumed by terror. Their hairs on their back of their necks bristled and stood up on the end. 1, 2, 3. He lost count because of the panic and grit in his teeth. 7, no 8. 8 of them. It seemed 3 humans were not the only ones who thought of taking shelter from the dark sea on these cliffs. He trembled. These cliffs were a death trap. Noticing something on his face, Nephis tensed. Sunny, he slowly turned his head to her and whispered, "Don't speak, don't move, just stay where you are." Oh shit, dude. She followed her instructions without asking for the reason. However, a silent question appeared on her face. Casey did the same. Sunny closed his eyes and breathed in, trying to calm his panicking mind down. There was no hopeless situation. Every problem had a solution. He just had to think of one. The scavengers did not attack yet. Maybe they were asleep or patiently waiting out the storm, trying not to move in fear or attracting more terrifying monsters. Maybe they simply did not notice the humans. After all, it was unknown how well these creatures could see. Were they able to see in the dark? Probably not, or at least not as well as they could. They were still hope. Yeah, so there was still hope. Sunny opened his eyes. Oh, scroll down too much. Sunny opened his eyes and looked at the small island again. By this time, his perspective was different. He saw the deep darkness, the clamor of the storm that drowned out most of the sounds, the large distance between the scavengers. This was his territory. It was perfectly suited for a murderous shadow. Didn't he dream of becoming a silent assassin? Well, here was his chance. Oh? Is he going to be assassin? This was his chance. Easy Geeky, you are the goat. Thanks for reaching out live again. No, of course, man. Now, I feel like I owe it to you guys. So at least finish this damn arc. I started it. I owe it to you guys. He just had to execute each step perfectly, crawl through the darkness, strike without altering the enemy, kill each of them with one precise blow. Rinse and repeat? I don't know if it's going to be that easy, man. Rinse and repeat. He already knew their strengths and weaknesses. All that was left was to put that knowledge to practice. And even if he makes a mistake, there were other means to fall back onto. Echo Nephis could do their part if he landed himself in danger. Yes, that could work. It has to. Sunny looked at Changing Star and Casey. I'll take care... I'll take care of this. Before they could react, he seemed to dissolve into the shadows. Fucking so cool, dude. So badass, dude. Under the covers of darkness, Sunny sneaked forward. His steps were soft and measured. His breathing controlled. He quickly determined the optimal order of attack to minimize the chance of being discovered and proceeded to the first target. A hulking scavenger there was the furthest away from the pack. Okay, so I've played Assassin's Creed. I know how we approach this shit. You just single them out one by one. Hidden in the shadows, Sunny suddenly felt calm and focused. He felt as though they were finally in his natural element. As the looming silhouette of the scavenger approached, he slowed down and circled around his target. The monster did not move, oblivious to the lurking threat that was drawing closer with each sound. Sunny held his breath and prepared to attack. He only had one chance. Do it right. With that thought, he silently lunged forward. 1 step, 2. Sunny jumped and easily landed on the monster's carapace. The Azure blade was already in his hand in the steel dark. As a moment later, it plunged into the weak point of the scavenger's back, piercing the chitin and destroying its brain. He got it. The quiet crack of the breaking carapace was quickly washed away by the brain. It was done. Suddenly felt a sense of triumph appeared in his heart and quickly suppressed it. This wasn't the right time to celebrate. 7 targets were still waiting for him in the darkness. He retrieved the sword and jumped down for the scavenger's corpse, then suddenly frowned. Why was the spell silent? Oh, he didn't kill it. Why was the spell silent? It didn't announce his kill nor the absorption of shadow fragments. Feeling his skin crawl, suddenly turned around and looked at the scavenger. At first he was afraid that the beast was still alive, but that wasn't the case. It was as dead as it could be. However, on closer inspection, Sunny noticed something that he had missed before, and when he did, his face paled. Wait, what the fuck? If it was as dead as it could be? If it was dead standing up? What the fuck does that mean? The next chapter is called Death Trap. Unless it's like a den for a bigger beast and it's just watching. What? Okay, let's read the next chapter. Let's keep going, dude. Chapter 50 is called Death Trap. The scavenger was dead, however, it wasn't Sunny's blade that killed it. While circling the target, he was focused on staying unnoticed and not alerting the enemy to his presence before reaching the optimal position for an attack. After that, he only saw the monster's back. That's why he didn't notice the terrible wound that ran from the top of the creature's torso to its segmented legs, obscured by the rain. The unbreakable carapace was cut open like a tin can. What the fuck? Kill it. The scavenger's flesh and mangled organs could easily seen through the large gap, oozing azure blood. It streamed down only to be washed away by the storm. Sunny gulped. He might have felt awkward after performing a perfect ambush on a long dead monster if not for the fear of whatever he had killed in the first place. Looking around, he hesitated and summoned the azure blade back, then wrapped himself in the shadow. The small island was silent except for the howling of the winds. The rain was still falling down, forming a constant veil that hid away all details and distant objects. A rare flash of lightning sometimes flooded this bleak world with stark whiteness. Then a thunderclap wind came, making the skies tremble. With cold fright and settling deep in his bones, Sunny cautiously moved for the next scavenger. He could tell from the distance that it was also dead, but he had come closer and make sure. Indeed, he was right. The creature was almost severed in half by an unknown assailant. Its innards were lying on the ground in a messy pile. The darkness had long ago stopped being comforting, becoming terrifying and oppressive instead. Sunny shivered. By the time he checked on all 8 monsters and confirmed that they were all dead, his nauseousness and scared out his wits. Sunny had first realized that the black shapes were what the black shapes were. In fact, scavengers. He thought that the situation was as bad as it can get. Now he wasn't sure anymore. In fact, he was pretty convinced that things went from bad to worse. Standing near the last scavenger, Sunny observed his surroundings and thought about returning to Neffs and Casey. Maybe the terrifying killer had already left the island. I don't know if it's that easy. They could just hide and hope for the best. He wouldn't be alone. At least, however, not knowing what kind of danger was hiding in the darkness would drive him insane long before the morning came. Plus, with his fate to attribute, hoping for the best was a fool's errand. That's why, although his body was covered in cold sweat, Sunny gritted his teeth and slowly walked towards the ridge that was obscured by the rest of the island from him. Coming close, he started climbing to be as quiet as possible. The ridge wasn't very high, so he was able to scale it without much effort. Staking close to the rocks and raising his head and looking down, then he mainly wanted to let go and fall to the ground. Right beneath him, just a few meters away, a dark silhouette was outlined against the rocks. It was much larger than the scavengers, with a jagged spikes growing out from his thick carapace. Its chitin was black and crimson, like an ancient armor splattering with flesh blood. Instead of pincers, the 2 terrifying bone scythes were protruding from the joints of its arms. Each one was long and sharp enough to split a scavenger in 2. Sunny froze, afraid to move. He even stopped the breathing, so that's the killer. Oh, he found it? It was one of the monsters that they had seen retrieving the... one of the 2 that got the soul shards. It was one of the monsters they had seen retrieving the transcendent soul shards from the giant shark's carcass, or another of their kind. He remembered how the 2 creatures had cut through the hordes of scavengers, killing or throwing aside any beast that got in their way. Slaughtering just 7 of them was not pose a problem for something that deadly. Not to mention getting rid of the 3 sleepers carefully, not to make a sound. Suddenly, slowly lowered himself down. His whole body was trembling. Moving his arms and legs with utmost precision, he began climbing down from the ridge, prying not to be heard, sensed or noticed in some other way. Luckily, the monster remained oblivious to his presence. Reaching the ground, Sunny took a few steps back, still facing the ridge. He had to force himself to turn around, feeling as though his back was being pierced by invisible needles. The young man stealthily moved in the direction where he had left his companions. A couple of minutes later, he returned to Neffs and Casey. The girls were tense and nervous, waiting for his return in the darkness. Before coming out of the shadows, suddenly let them know they were approaching. "It's me." Neffs moved, lowering her sword just a little. Her face was a little grim. "What is the situation?" she said, carefully to keep her voice low. Sunny slowly exhaled, finally feeling a bit safer for the first time. He was genuinely happy not to be alone in this cursed place. Damn, man, that's not good. "There are 8 scavengers around us, but they're all dead. The killer is one of the big monsters we saw, the thing with the crimson pattern on the carapace and the scythes instead of pincers. It's hiding from the storm beneath a stone ridge not far from here. A bolt of lightning flashed, illuminating everything around it. In its aftermath, it looked as though the 2 white sparks ignited in Changing Star's eyes. Soon their reflection was gone, leaving them gray and inscrutable again. I cannot read." She tilted her head and whispered, as though talking to herself, "An awakened monster." Sunny licked his lips. "Yeah, so what should we do?" Neffis thought for a while, leaning on her sword. Then she looked at him and said, "Kill it." Sunny stared at her, lost for words. Finally, he collected himself and said as the first thing that came to his mind, "Are you nuts? The idea of fighting that... I don't even know how the fuck we fight it. The idea of fighting that thing was pretty ridiculous, if not completely insane." Realizing that his words might have sounded a bit rude, he cleared his throat and added, "I mean, have you thought this through? How are we supposed to kill that monstrosity?" Neffis slowly inhaled. "It's not a question of thinking things through. We simply have no choice." She glanced at Casey. She was She was listening to them with pale face and explained, "We can't leave the cliffs before morning, and neither can the monster. However, once the sun rises, it will easily see us and attack. Then our only advantage, the element of surprise, will be gone. So we fight it now. If we have to fight it anyways, it's better to not be the ones initiating the fight." Changing Star looked around and added, "It's not completely dark yet, although barely. I can still see it. Once the night comes, this won't be the chase, so we will have to attack it first and do it soon." Sunny shook his head. This still doesn't explain how we're going to kill it. That thing just dispatched 8 scavengers like it was nothing. We're not of its opponents. We don't even know its weaknesses. Nephis frowned. After a short pause, she said, It's just an awakened monster." Oh yeah, only. Sunny couldn't help but stare at her in disbelief. "What do you mean, just an awakened monster? Have you forgotten that all 3 of us are only sleepers? Dormant humans are not supposed to be able to deal with awakened beasts, let alone monsters. The fact that we can reliably kill scavengers is already abnormal." She looked back at him undisturbed and simply answered, "But we are abnormal." Sunny stood there with his mouth open, not knowing what to say. Nephis sighed. "You and I are both not exactly ordinary sleepers, aren't we? Don't try and deny it. Some ordinary simply wouldn't have survived in this place." He frowned, not happy about her line of thought. Meanwhile, Chainsaw continued, "You, me, plus the awakened beast you have as an echo, plus the advantage of a surprise attack. I'm not saying that it won't be easy. We might die, but there's a good chance that we won't." She looked down at the silvery blade in her sword and added after a couple of seconds, "In any case, as I have already said, we don't have a choice." Sunny gritted his teeth, trying to find a logical retort. However, her reasoning seemed unassailable. What is that word? Unassailable. He just had a really bad feeling about fighting that monster. In the ensued silence, Casey, who was quiet, began... Oh my god, cannot read. In the ensuing silence, Casey, who had been quiet all this time, suddenly spoke. "You are forgetting about the main advantage we have over that thing." Both of them looked at her surprised. The blind girl turned to face and slightly lifted her head. "We are intelligent and that monster is not." Her words echoed in darkness. Sunny sighed. It seems that a fight with the bone scythe monster was inevitable. Sometime later, he was standing in the darkness, looking at a terrifying creature in front of him. Her expression was grim and somber. Tightly gripping the azure blade, Sunny slowly inhaled. The ominous feeling he had before was still there, now stronger than ever. "I don't like this." With this thought, he exhaled and raised his hand. Damn. All right, man. That's good. This is hype. I don't know how we fight this, but I like the fact that Neff is like, "Yo, you and me, we're not ordinary. Like, we are outliers when it comes to like fucking people in like this like in this domain. Like, you and me are outliers. Like, we can do this." One sec, let me do this. Okay, I almost didn't record that, my bad. Chapter 51 is called Carapace Centurion. Did I pronounce it right? Centurion. I think I pronounced it right. Shit, my bad. Let's reread this. I actually forgot to hit record. By the way, how many chapters? We're probably gonna read for like about an hour or so. We've read about 45 minutes, so I think we can go a little bit farther. We got, I think we can go for another 20 minutes. I mean, we'll see. We'll see how we're doing after this chapter. Maybe 1 or 2 more chapters. Monsters did possess some rudimentary intelligence. However, they could not compare to humans. At their core, they were still predators who acted mostly on instinct. Their cunning was beastly in nature and was not that hard to overcome. That gave the 3 sleepers a chance to leverage their advantage. After finalizing the plan, they made some preparations. While Changing Star was getting ready, Sunny had retrieved the soul shards from the 8 dead scavengers. After delivering them to the silver-haired girl, he watched as though they had handed to her chest and crushed them in the first one after another, absorbing the essence of each shard into her soul core. After a few minutes, when the Changing Star caused by the absorption were over, Nephis opened her eyes and slowly inhaled. To a sleeper, consuming the shards of 8 awakened beasts was equivalent to slaying 16 dormant creatures. While not tremendous, it was a slightly significant boost in her physical ability. Her body had to become stronger, faster, enhanced in every way. They were going to need every bit of strength to survive because of how attuned Nephis was to her physicality. Getting accustomed to her new limits did not take her long. Very soon she looked at him and asked, "Are you ready?" Sunny sighed and glanced at his shadows, hoping to get some moral support. The shadow pretended to not notice and ignored him. Disloyal bastard, as ready as I'll ever be. Nephis nodded and turned to Casey. There was nothing really to say. They had already discussed everything that there was to discuss, and empty words could not make the blind girl worry any less. Come to think of it, Sunny wouldn't have wanted to trade places with her, even though out of the 3 of them, she was the only one who didn't have to risk her life in combat. Facing the enemy, no matter how terrifying, was better than waiting powerlessly for the outcome, knowing that there was nothing you can do to change it. From that point of view, he was actually the lucky one. Casey tried to put on a brave face. She turned to Nephis and forced a smile. Go and kill that thing. Maybe you'll finally get some decent to wear and stop making me feel so guilty. A corner of Changing Star's lips curled up. Okay. After that, she turned to Sunny and returned to her usual serious self. Let's go. A few minutes later, he was standing on top of the rocky ridge, looking down at the deadly monster. The shadow was warped around his body, enhancing Sunny's physical ability. Their plan was pretty solid and had a high chance of working. However, he still couldn't get rid of the ominous feeling that this was not going to end well. I don't like it. With a sigh, Sunny raised his hand and summoned the silver bell. Then he lightly shook it, causing the clear melodic ringing to resound amidst the storm. Immediately, the monsters below moved, turning its massively torso around and looking for the source of the sudden noise. As he saw Sunny, a mad crimson flame ignited in his eyes. However, Sunny did not see any of this because he was already facing the other way. As soon as the bell rang, he turned around and jumped down to the ridge without a second of hesitation. The ridge wasn't very tall, but there was still a considerable distance to the ground. Sunny hit the rocks hard and rolled, trying to disperse the force of the impact. As soon as he got back to his feet, he ran, trying to get as far away as possible. A moment later, the ridge exploded behind his back. The monster simply crashed into it with his hulking body, breaking through the layers of rock as though they were paper. Simultaneously, there was a flash of lightning and a thunderclap, drowning the loud rumble of the falling debris. The creature looked on, retreating Sunny, and lunged forward. Trying to pierce his body was one of its size. Shards of rock were flowing like a torrent from its spiked carapace. Luckily, Sunny was already far enough. Without slowing down, he lowered his body, ran for several more meters, and then turned around. The pictures of the monster, who was more than 3 meters tall, rushing at him like a speeding train, was enough to make any person falter. However, Sunny stood his ground, raising the azure blade above his head. After all, he was the bait. Half a dozen meters away from him, the monster finally reached their trap, almost unnoticeable in the darkness and the pouring rain. The golden rope was strung between the two massive boulders at the height of the creature's legs, joints. Earlier, Sunny lowered his body to run beneath it. Overwhelmed by bloodlust, the monster did not notice the tautly drawn ropes and ran into it at full speed. If it was a normal rope, it wouldn't, without a doubt, immediately snap. However, the golden rope was a memory, and being incredibly sturdy was one of its attributes. The rocks it was tied to, unfortunately, were quite mundane. Also, the rocks shattered, but not the rope. They shattered almost immediately, but the damage was already done. With its front legs suddenly jerked backwards, the Scythe Slayer lost its balance and crashed into it ground face first, sliding forward on the wet stone and leaving behind it a shallow trench. Sunny jumped away. The monster was unprotruded. Almost immediately, the two bone scythes pierced the ground, jerking its massive body to a stop. In the next moment, and unexpectedly swift and nimble for its size, it was already beginning to rise. If it was allowed to stand up, their fates would be sealed. Fortunately, Sunny's echo was faster. The moment the monster fell, it stopped pretending to be one of the dead scavengers, got up and dashed forward. Just as their enemy was about to rise, it jumped out on its carapace from behind, pinning the creature down with its weight, and locked its pincers on the creature's arms beneath the point where the bone scythes began. Oh, and it cuts him? Despite the fact that the echo was wounded by the spikes growing from the monster's carapace, it succeeded in immobilizing it, at least for a second. A second was enough. As though out of nowhere, Nephis, who was lying in ambush, appeared in front of the monster. Darting between its terrifying scythes, she leaned forward and delivered a devastating thrust with her longsword, putting her whole weight behind it. They didn't know if the awakened monster had the same weak spot on its back as its lesser relatives. I feel like it would. The scavengers had, however, there was no reason to assume that there was no gap between its carapace and its torso armor. It was a mechanical issue. Anything that had to be flexible could not be too rigid. The tip of Changing Star's sword plunged into its narrow grab. Then the sword disappeared into the monstrosity's body, penetrating so deep its hilt ended up brushing against its chitin. Fucking Sunny. Hell yes. Hell yes, Sunny thought triumphant. However, the next second, his expression dimmed because the creature didn't even seem to notice the wound that was supposed to be, if not fatal. How do we beat this? Then, at least heavily deliberating, straining its body a little, it suddenly twisted, throwing the echo off its carapace, and rose to its feet. The bone scythe scraped against the rock and pulled them out of the ground. Defenseless, Nephis was right in front of it. Her sword was still stuck to the monster's flesh. Oh no. Sunny was too far away to do nothing, circling around the massive creature to attack it from behind. The echo was in the ground, still reeling from being thrown off the enemy's back. It didn't seem like it couldn't help either. For the moment, Changing Star was on her own, the scythes piercing the air, aiming for her flesh. At the last moment, however, a pair of pincers looked onto them into the iron grip. They gave Nephis another fraction of a second to react. Letting go of the sword, she dove around in creature's body, hiding in the blind spot and remaining scythe's attack range. As far as hiding places went, this one wasn't optimal, since all the monster had to do was crush her into the bloody pulp was to lie down. However, in that moment, Nephis had no other choice. This is bad, this is bad. By then, Sunny was already behind the creature, hoping to buy Nephis sometime. He brandished the azure blade and slashed down. The sword connected with the joint of one of the monster's rear legs, drawing the azure's blood. However, unlike how it was in the battle against the scavenger, he failed to completely sever the limb. It was too tough and too thick. And the next moment, the legs disappeared from Sunny's field of vision. Crap. As that thought appeared in his mind, Sunny raised his head and looked at the monster. Somehow, it had already turned around and was now facing him. Two crimson flames burning with bloodlust in its eyes. Before Sunny could properly react, the sharp tip of a bone scythe hit him in the chest with the force of a siege ram. The only thing he managed to do was to transfer the shadow from its body to the puppeteer shrouds. Because of this lightning-fast decision, the armor it held, he wasn't pierced through the heart and impaled on the scythe. However, it was a small consultation. The force of the blow was still enough to make his ribcage cave in and send his body flying through the air like a ragdoll. Somehow, Sunny found himself lying on the ground. His body felt weird and he couldn't breathe. Somehow bitter was flowing from his mouth, making him choke. It was blood. He was drowning in his own blood. Weakly, Sunny tried to move, but his limbs wouldn't listen to him. Only the shadow listened, enveloping his body and delaying the inevitable a little. I'm hurt. With his thoughts moving slower and slower, as though submerged in a dense fog, he looked up, hoping to see the stars. Instead, he saw two burning crimson eyes approaching him from the darkness. And it fucking keeps going up to him. Oh, shit. Yeah, dude, long story short, brutal, and he's fucking cooked, dude. All right, so this is going to be the last chapter for today. Chapter 52 is called Clarity. So only in death does Sunny see clarity. I like that. Very symbolic. In that moment, hovering on the edge of nothingness, Sunny realized that he was about to die. He had to struggle against the fog that permeated his mind, slowing down his thoughts and dampening all emotions, all except fear. Despite the fact that his body was broken and his mind was paralyzed, some stubborn part of Sunny was still refusing to give up. He wasn't ready to die, at least not without giving his all to survive. He was revolted at the thought of giving the world the satisfaction of the win. That would be so infuriating. Hadn't he told Hero that he was going to survive no matter what, to spite them all? That's right, he might not be a shameless liar, but a promise was still a promise. But how was he even supposed to survive? No matter how he looked at it, the situation seemed to be hopeless. As the Scythe Slayer approached, its eyes shining menacingly with the bloodthirsty crimson light, Sunny tried to pierce through the fog that enveloped his mind. However, his attempts were aimless and weak. It was hard to find purchase in the fog. It was hard to find purchase in the fog. He needed an anchor. Suddenly, a simple thought caught his attention. It was something he had repeated 1,000 times, burning into his mind. Repetition experienced clarity. Clarity. He remembered what Nephis had taught him. The essence of combat was murder. Any action performed during battle served only one of two purposes. It was either to kill your enemy or to prevent the enemy from killing you. If he could learn that, he would have enough clarity to master that mind. Back then, he didn't really understand the profound meaning behind the simple word clarity that Nephis had used, but now with his mind shambles, he was finally able to grasp it. The two truths behind the essence and purpose of combat were simple and solid, almost tangible. Even in his half-conscious state, he was still able to use them and stable foundation in the fog. Then he reformed his mind around the foundation, building it along the stark lines of that truth. Suddenly, he was able to think again. What's more, his thoughts was clear and incredibly fast, free of all unnecessary distractions. This was clarity. Sunny looked up at the advancing monster, calmly weighing his options. His body was pretty much useless. He couldn't move his limbs at all. The shadows still followed his commands, but I lost my place. Shit. His body was pretty much useless. He couldn't move his limbs. The shadow still followed his every command, but it was busy doing an important job, keeping him from dying immediately. Even with its help, he wouldn't be able to last long, but this was a useless thought. He couldn't do anything about it, so there was no sense and wasting time considering it further. With his body immobilized, memories couldn't be used. That left only the echo. The Carapace scavenger was going to have to be his only tool to either kill the enemy or prevent the enemy from killing him. The monster was quickly approaching Sunny, and its mandibles moved, viciousness saliva following down from them in a torrent of transparent mucus. In a flash of lightning, he was able to see and instantly register every strike, every scratch, every abrasion on the creature's carapace. The handle of Changing Star's sword was still protruding from its body, washed in Zur blood. What an ugly bastard. What the fuck? What an ugly bastard. Sunny was being hypocritical. I mean, look at him, dude. Truth be told, with its black carapace painted with crimson patterns and a mighty body specially designed by mayhem and slaughter, the Scythe Slayer looked striking and incredibly menacing. It was almost majestic in a terrifying, murderous kind of way. Unable to move, he had to look helplessly at the monster close to the distance between them and loomed over Sunny's broken, bleeding body. Its scythes rose in the air, ready to strike down. Looking right into the monster's burning eyes, Sunny thought, "Go to hell, you overgrown bug." The scythe shot towards his body. In the last moment, something massive and furious ramped into the monsters from the side. Throwing it away, it was Sunny's Carapace scavenger. Oh shit! Its pincers got him. From the side? Wait, no, the monster from the side throwing it away. Not bothering with its own safety anymore, the echo entwined itself with the enemy into a chaotic mess of limbs as they rolled on the ground. Despite the fact that it was smaller and weaker, its crazy assault and complete disregard for its own life were enough to give the bigger monsters some pause. Damn, okay. The echo lashed out with its pincers, ramming them against the creature's carapace in a crazy world of blows. For a moment, the howling of the wind was drowned out by the clamor of chitin striking against the chitin. The Slayer's carapace mostly held, but a couple of cracks did appear on the black surface. However, it was still superior to the scavenger in every way. Even with one of its scythes pinned awkwardly under its body, the monster was more than able to repel the sudden attacks. With an angry screech, it sliced with the other scythes, cutting one of the scavenger's pincers' arms clean off. Then it strained its legs and threw the smaller creature away. In the process, the rear leg that was already wounded by Sunny broke off, but the monster didn't pay it any attention. Burning with madness and fury, it untangled its limbs and slowly stood up. Another deafening screech resounded in the howling dark. This is so fucking cool, dude. This is so different from Lord of the Mysteries. I like how, like, bleak this fucking series is. It's like, it's so eerie. This is more like dark fantasy, right? I like at least the genre right now, it feels more dark fantasy than anything else I've read. Burning with madness and fury, it untangled its limbs and slowly stood up. Another deafening screech resounded in the howling darkness of the storm, hurting Sunny's ears. Now what? He thought, momentarily lost for ideas. But then something very unexpected happened. As the Slayer moved to its finish off the echo, it had slightly raised and leaned its torso back to account for its loss of a rear leg, and it kept its balance. At last, I lower the volume. Yeah, it's gritty. I like that about it, man. At that moment, a bolt of lightning landed right in the middle of the small island. With how tall the monster was, the lightning was immediately attracted to the handle of the sword. The lightning hit the sword? The Zur blade? Because he's holding it up? With how tall the monster was, the lightning was immediately attracted to the handle of the sword that was still sticking from its body, aiming at the sky at a slight angle. Fuck, he is so lucky. At that moment, Changing Star's longsword suddenly became a lightning rod. Instantly, hundreds of millions of volts of electricity coursed through the Slayer's body. They were so fucking lucky. What? In a blinding flash of light, it was thrown to the ground. Wisps of smoke rose from the cracks of its carapace. In a strange turn of events, arcs of residual electricity danced with the monster's chitin, slowly accumulating on the crimson patterns on it. Under the influence of the crimson pattern, changing its color, became white and incandescent. Sunny stared at all this in bewilderment. It's glowing. For a second, he hoped that the monster was dead, but no, a single strike of the lightning was not enough to kill it. A creature like that, just a few moments after being electrocuted, the Slayer moved, slightly shaking its body. Although it was a rather bad shape, it was still alive and full of murderous intent. Looking somewhat dazed, the monster gathered its limbs and tried to stand up. Slowly but surely, it was coming back to its senses. The bone scythe scraped against the rocks, helping it rise. However, before it did, Nephis was suddenly right in front of it. Grabbing the hilt of the longsword, she grimaced as the heart burned in her hands. As the heat burned in her hands, then she twisted the blade, making the Slayer's body twitch, and pulled it out, breaking apart a large portion of its lower torso's armor. The monster tried to slash at her with a scythe, but the changing star was quicker. Dashing to the side, she simultaneously lashed out with her sword. The glowing white hot blade caught the creature's arm right below the joint and cleaved through it, sending the terrifying bone scythe flying through the air in the rain of azure blood. The Slayer screeched and swatted her away with one of its legs. Nephis was thrown back and rolled on the rocks. Losing the grip of the sword, her eyes momentarily lost focus. Oh, shit. Fated, one might say. I'm excited. And Fate is a big part. I am excited to... you know what? I'm somewhat familiar with Fate. I have read Lord of the Mysteries. I am somewhat familiar with Fate and Destiny, you would say. I think, right? The monster, or one would say lucky. The monster, on the contrary, was back to its senses. It seems as though the sudden pain of losing a limb had shaken it wide awake. Raising to its full height, it opened its huge, ugly mouth and let out a deafening, enraged shriek. Then it lunged towards Nephis with all-consuming hatred burning in its eyes, but it didn't get far. Right as the livid monster was beginning its attack, the battered echo appeared in its path. Its one of the remaining pincers shot forward, plunging into the wide gap in its armor created by Changing Star Sword. Twisting its arms, the scavenger pushed it inside the enemy's body, wreaking havoc on its innards. Ugh. In the end, it even lifted the whole monster in the air a little, its pincers going and almost up to its shoulder. The Slayer lashed out with its scythes, piercing the Echo's chest through. Oh shit, RIP. Then it twitched a couple of times and felt still. The scavenger screeched angrily and jerked its pincers, tearing the bigger monster's torso clean off its carapace. What? Proudly giving the inviscerated enemy one last look, it then staggered and collapsed to the ground. Sunny tiredly dismissed the Echo, hoping that it can survive. He wasn't feeling too well. In fact, he was pretty much done for. Oh, we did it! You have slain an awakened monster, Carapace Centurion. The spell's voice fell uneasily on his deaf ears. It sounded disordered and distant. You have received a memory. Starlight Legion armor? Oh, he got armor. You have your shadow grows stronger. I won. Sunny closed his eyes, finally allowing the pain and exhaustion to flood the mind. The fog was back, making everything feel like it was happening to someone else. He was tired and he couldn't breathe. Drowning the blood was not very pleasant. As his consciousness began to slip, he heard the sound of someone's hurriedly steps, and then two soft hands gently touched his face. Wow, that was fucking cool, dude. This series is starting to grow on me. It's pincers, it's scythes. They're slowly hooking me. Casey is iconic at this point. Iconic, you'd say. All right, man. I assume it's Casey. I don't think it's Nephis. I feel like she's out for the count at this point, so I assume it is her, right? I feel like it's Casey running up to grab him. So we'll see what happens. We'll be reading. Tuesday, will you do it? Yeah. No, yeah. Tuesday is LSC. Yeah, no, for people that don't know. Monday, I'll probably be reading, if not Shadow Slave or OV. We'll see what I read. But Tuesday, I'm going to be reading 4 chapters of LSC. It's been a month, so we got to pick that up. And then Wednesday, we'll be picking up the chapters I fell behind on Reverend Insanity. And we'll see. Yeah, no. Yeah, we got a lot of catch up to do. So we'll see how we'll break it down. But don't worry. LSC is definitely back on the table on Tuesday. We'll be reading the 4 chapters. And then, I don't know, man. I'm excited to see how strong Sunny gets. I know my reading was a little sporadic, right? Sporadic. My reading was a little sporadic today. Since I took a few days off from reading, I feel like a little jumbled. Since it's weird. If I'm not consistent, I get a little jumbled up. But this is good. We fucking killed another beast. We got a memory. What was it? We got armor. Let me scroll up a little bit. So he received a new memory, a Starlight Legion armor. His shadow grows stronger. We killed an awakened monster, the Carapace Centurion. We didn't get it as an echo. I didn't say that. But we took back our echo before it technically dies. But if it's an echo and it's technically just part of another rune slot, I wonder if you can just keep resummoning it even if it dies. Oh, wait a sec. If your shadow grows stronger and we turn the echo into a shadow, then by that logic, the Carapace or the scavenger should also grow stronger, right? Like if a shadow grows stronger, then the shadow scavenger should also grow stronger. So I can see how that's a net positive if we turn that into a shadow. But that was a fucking good read-through. I like it. That was a damn good fight. Well, at least they got out of a portion of the maze. They fought a stronger creature. Nephis got stronger. Sunny's getting stronger. Casey, I don't know how the fuck she gets stronger. I assume her vision should be more accurate. I feel like her visions will eventually reach a point where she can technically see, even though she doesn't see, she can still see, like she can still see where to fight or what to do. Remember Easy Geeky? It's 5. Wait, what's 5? What's 5? Yeah, lol. I never heard someone else pronounce Casey like that. Text to speech should help. Am I saying her name wrong? Oh, it's Cassie. Is it Cassie? Future reference? Wait, is it Cassie, not Casey? Cassie. Don't worry. Whatever. Don't worry about it for now. All right. But is her name Cassie or... Okay, Cassie 1 or Casey 2? It's Cassie. We fucking got it. Look at that. We learned the pronunciation. Fucking Cassie. Oh, so it's... so it's not Cassia. It's Cassia. And her nickname... Oh, it just clicked. So her full name is Cassia. And her nickname is... Fuck, I already forgot. Cassie? LOL, there needs to be a Casey counter. Well, at least I figured out the pronunciation a lot faster. Fucking Leonard took us hundreds of chapters. I was saying Leonard for hundreds of chapters. ATP, call her Casey for time to time just to mess with people. You know what's funny? I probably will. No, not intentionally. It's just going to happen on accident. But just to be sure, fuck. Cassie. It's not Casey. It's Cassie. Cassia. Silent S. Cassie. All right, this is a really bad outro. You like what you see? You want to see more? Make sure you like, comment, subscribe, and I'll see you guys all tomorrow for more Shadow Slave.